The cold, metallic tang of exhaust fumes clung to the air, a constant companion at the International Bridge Toll Plaza at night. You knew that scent intimately, just as you knew the rhythmic sigh of braking trucks and the impatient grumble of idling engines. Above, the sodium lamps bled their sickly yellow light across the asphalt, illuminating the skeletal frames of the toll booths, silent sentinels against the vast, dark river beyond. The collar of your worn jacket was pulled high, a futile shield against more than just the biting wind. It was a barricade against the echoes of a past that still clung to you like a shroud. Now, only the weight of regret pressed down. A low, insistent thrum approached, distinct from the usual symphony of the plaza. It didn't merge with the flow towards a toll booth. Instead, it glided, almost imperceptibly, to the edge of the deserted parking area you often frequented, a forgotten patch of gravel and weeds near the administrative building. The engine died, plunging the immediate vicinity into a sudden, unnerving quiet, broken only by the distant rush of traffic. A door opened. A figure emerged, tall and lean, silhouetted against the distant city glow. You watched, your hand instinctively dropping to where a holster once rested, finding only the rough fabric of your trousers. Old habits, etched deep. The stranger's steps crunched on the gravel, a precise, measured cadence approaching your solitary vigil. Marcus Thorne. The voice was a low murmur, yet it cut through the ambient noise with an unsettling clarity. It carried the smooth, unaccented tone of someone accustomed to command, to being heard. I had a feeling I might find you here. You didn't respond immediately. Your eyes, accustomed to the dim light, traced the sharp lines of their expensive overcoat, the glint of polished shoes. No badge. No uniform. Just an air of quiet authority that bristled against your own tattered sense of self. You've been. Off the grid, the stranger continued, stopping a respectful distance away, their hands clasped loosely in front of them. But some things, Marcus, refused to stay buried. The words were a calculated strike, a precise incision into the hardened scar tissue of your memory. Buried. Your gaze remained fixed, unwavering, searching for the tell in their posture, the flicker in their eyes. Justice, they replied, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching their lips. Or, perhaps, a chance for you to rediscover it. They paused, allowing the weight of their statement to settle. The journalist. Amelia Hayes. Her case. It's resurfaced. The name hit you like a physical blow. The brilliant investigative journalist. Her murder. Dismissed as a random act of violence, a robbery gone wrong, a narrative you had never believed, not for a single, agonizing moment. A bitter laugh escaped your lips, a dry, humorless sound. Resurfaced? After all these years? It was dead, buried under a mountain of bureaucratic indifference and political convenience. Perhaps, the stranger conceded, their voice still maddeningly calm. But new information has come to light. Connections. To a prominent politician's current presidential campaign. This wasn't some random inquiry. This was precise. Calculated. They knew exactly what buttons to push, what ghosts to conjure. The politician, the organization. There are others. Active. Better equipped. Because you were there, Marcus. You saw the cracks. You felt the rot. Undetected. unburdened by the very system that failed Amelia, and failed you. A tremor ran through you, a spark igniting in the ashes of your disillusionment. Unburdened. It sounded like freedom, but felt like a trap. The desire for justice, dormant for so long, began to stir, a sluggish beast awakening. Help Amelia. Uncover the truth, no matter how ugly. Reclaim what was taken. Your badge. Your reputation. Your peace. All of it awaits, if you are willing to step back into the light, into the fire. The wind howled softly, a mournful lament across the bridge. The International Bridge Toll Plaza at night felt suddenly vast, stretching into an unknown future. You looked at the stranger, then out at the endless expanse of the river, reflecting the city's distant, indifferent glow. The choice was stark: remain a forgotten sentinel, or confront the demons that had haunted your every waking moment. The journalist's face, clear as a photograph, flashed in your mind. Her vibrant eyes, now forever closed by a hand that had never been brought to justice. The fire had never truly gone out. It had merely been banked. Now, a draft had found it. "Tell me everything," you said, your voice low, steady, a promise and a threat. "Tell me where we start." The wind, a relentless sculptor of sound, carved a mournful anthem across the International Bridge Toll Plaza at night. It whipped strands of hair across your face, a cold caress, as you stood on the precipice of a decision. The city's distant glow shimmered on the river's surface, an indifferent eye watching your private struggle. The stranger, a silhouette against the mercury vapor lamps, waited, their patience a silent pressure. "So, Marcus Thorne," the voice was low, gravelly, barely audible above the wind's lament. "The choice is yours. Walk away, drown in the bitter tide of your past. Or step into the current, and perhaps, just perhaps, find your way back to shore." You felt the phantom weight of your old badge, the ghost of its cold metal against your palm. Redemption. The word tasted like ash in your mouth, a promise too often broken, a hope too easily extinguished. But beneath the ash, a flicker. A spark of the man you once were, the one who chased shadows, who believed in the stark clarity of justice. Dismissed as random, a street-level tragedy, it had never quite settled right. It was a siren song you couldn't fully resist. The stranger offered a curt nod, a subtle shift of their shoulders. A locker key. Union Station. Code on the back. You have 24 hours to retrieve it. After that, it's gone. And so are we. The small, tarnished brass key glinted briefly in the dim light before it was pressed into your gloved hand. Its cold metal was a tangible anchor to this sudden, unsettling reality. The journey to Union Station was a blur of city lights and the persistent hum of the subway. The key felt heavy in your pocket, a promise and a burden. The old station, a cavern of echoes and forgotten journeys, offered a kind of anonymity you craved. You found the bank of lockers, a grid of tarnished metal doors, and located the one marked with the etched number matching the key. The lock clicked with a resonant finality, and the door swung open to reveal a single, unassuming manila envelope. No fanfare, no dramatic reveal, just the quiet thud of paper on metal as you lifted it out. Back in the sparse solitude of your apartment, the city's distant murmur a lullaby of indifference, you spread the contents across your battered kitchen table. The scent of aged paper and dry ink filled the air, a nostalgic aroma of forgotten truths. The files were a haphazard collection: photocopied police reports, grainy photographs, the journalist's personal notes, a few newspaper clippings. The journalist, a sharp-eyed woman named Amelia Vance, stared out from a faded ID photo, her gaze intelligent, unyielding. You remembered her, vaguely, from the early days. Her articles had been incisive, her questions relentless. You began with the original police reports, skimming the familiar jargon, the sterile accounts of the crime scene. A brutal, seemingly motiveless attack in a quiet park. Robbery gone wrong, the initial conclusion stated. Yet, no valuables were taken. Her expensive watch, her wallet, her phone, all untouched. Only her briefcase, a worn leather satchel, had been missing. A detail that had always bothered you, a discordant note in the official symphony of facts. Then, you turned to Amelia Vance's own notes. Her handwriting, a precise, elegant script, filled page after page. Her notes detailed a web of shell corporations, obscure lobbying firms, and offshore accounts. Names, dates. Transactions, a meticulously researched tapestry of financial malfeasance. You cross-referenced names in her notes with the current news. One name, in particular, leaped out at you from a financial ledger Amelia had meticulously copied: Aegis Holdings. You remembered that name, vaguely, from a recent news report about campaign donations. Now, flipping through a stack of recent newspaper clippings you'd pulled from a dusty box, you found it again. Aegis Holdings, a major contributor to the current presidential campaign of Senator Thomas Sterling, the very politician whose star was currently ascending with meteoric speed. A faint line of sweat beaded on your forehead, despite the cool air in the room. The original investigation had focused on street gangs, on opportunity. They hadn't looked at the money. They hadn't looked at the names. Or perhaps, you grimly considered, they had been steered away. Amelia's notes spoke of a land deal, a massive urban redevelopment project that had been stalled for years, suddenly fast-tracked. He had scribbled a question mark next to a specific parcel of land, marking it as key. You vaguely recalled Sterling championing that very project in a recent press conference, touting it as a boon for the city. The prominent politician, whose campaign was fueled by the very entities Amelia Vance had been investigating. The random murder, now seeming anything but. Your fingers traced a diagram Amelia had drawn, a complex flowchart of interconnected companies and individuals. The puppet master pulling strings from the elite's highest echelons? This wasn't just about clearing your name. This was about something far larger, far more dangerous, a conspiracy that had been allowed to fester for years, now threatening to swallow the very fabric of justice. And you, Marcus Thorne, had just plunged your hand into the ice. The choice was made. The current had caught you. And it was pulling you deep. Who we are, as a nation. About the very identity we project to the world. He pushed the folder into your hands. Read it. Then tell me if the ghost of Amelia Vance allows you to refuse. The folder felt heavy, a physical manifestation of the unresolved grief and guilt that had been your constant companions. You retreated into the quiet of your apartment, the man's words a lingering chill. You opened the file, the scent of old paper and new secrets filling the air. Ilara's photograph stared back at you, her intelligent eyes brimming with a life brutally extinguished. You scanned the summary, the familiar details of her demise, then your gaze caught on a newly added addendum. A recent intelligence brief, detailing financial irregularities linked to Senator Caldwell's burgeoning presidential campaign. Mentions of a shadowy corporate entity known only as the Sovereign Group. The brief suggested these entities were connected to the very issues Ilara had been investigating before her death: the exploitation of vulnerable communities, the manipulation of public policy through dark money. The senator, a man whose public persona gleamed with philanthropic virtue, now stood under a shadow cast by the ghost of a journalist. The ghost of Ilara Vance did not allow you to refuse. You found the ghost of your old badge lingered, its phantom weight a promise you could almost touch. Redemption. The word, once a bitter taste, now pulsed with a fragile, fierce hope. You were no longer just Marcus, the disgraced. You were Marcus Thorne, the hunter of shadows, again. The cold case files, brittle with age and neglect, lay spread across your worn kitchen table, illuminated by the stark beam of a single lamp. The journalist's meticulous notes, preserved in crisp, digital scans, spoke of a mind sharp as broken glass. You traced the spidery script, her annotations, her underlined phrases, a roadmap to her undoing. She hadn't been hunting a random story, he had been digging into the roots of something vast, something deeply embedded. Your fingers danced across the digital copies, zooming in on scanned bank statements, shell corporation registrations, and campaign finance reports. The journalist hadn't merely collected data, he had woven a tapestry of deceit. You saw it then, a recurring pattern, a name echoing through the labyrinthine financial records: Viridian Holdings. A corporate leviathan, its tendrils wrapped around infrastructure projects, resource management, and seemingly philanthropic endeavors. But beneath the polished facade, the journalist had found something else. Her final, incomplete report detailed a series of substantial, circuitous donations, funneled through a network of foundations and trusts. Each thread led back to Viridian Holdings. And each thread, inevitably, led to the campaign of the prominent politician, the one now vying for the highest office. The candidate, with their charismatic speeches and promises of progress, was the public face for legislation that would, you now saw, disproportionately benefit Viridian Holdings. The journalist wasn't just exposing corruption, he was exposing a systemic takeover, a silent acquisition of power. He was killed not for what she might uncover, but for what she had uncovered. The pieces clicked into place with an unnerving finality. Her death, once dismissed as a street crime, was a deliberate silencing. The files, now pieced together in your mind, painted a grim picture. Viridian Holdings was buying influence, building an empire not with commerce, but with policy. And the candidate was their unwitting, or perhaps willing, pawn. The night outside your window was a canvas of inky black, punctuated by the distant glow of city lights. You gathered your printed notes, the highlighted names, the incriminating connections. The need to verify, to push deeper, compelled you. There was a contact, an old source from your badge-wearing days, a quietly influential figure who understood the undercurrents of power. A meeting, late and discreet, was set. You drove, the city's hum a low drone around you. The route took you towards the outskirts, towards the International Bridge Toll Plaza at night. The air grew cooler, thinner, as you approached the illuminated gantries. Headlights streaked past, red taillights receded into the distance. You slowed, waiting for the barrier arm to rise. It hugged your bumper, closer than courtesy allowed. The barrier lifted. You paid, your eyes darting to the rearview mirror. The sedan remained, its engine a low growl, following your every move. The sedan matched your speed, holding its position a mere car length behind. This was no casual tale. A prickle of unease sharpened into a jolt of alarm. You were being watched. You were being followed. The bridge stretched endlessly, a ribbon of asphalt under the moonless sky. You checked your mirrors again. The sedan was still there, a predator pacing its prey. Your grip tightened on the steering wheel. This wasn't a warning, it was a declaration. Suddenly, the sedan surged forward, swerving aggressively into the lane beside you. It edged closer, its heavy frame pushing, nudging, trying to force you towards the concrete barrier that separated the lanes. The metal shrieked against metal, a harsh, grating sound that ripped through the night. You swerved hard to the left, pulling away from the punishing scrape, but the sedan mirrored your move, a relentless, unyielding force. The bridge became a tunnel of fear, the roar of the wind and the screech of tires drowning out all other sounds. You saw the sheer drop to the river, the cold, dark water beckoning. A flash of memory, evasive driving training, 100 years ago, when your badge still gleamed. You remembered the instructor's gruff voice, "Always have an out, Thorne." You cut the wheel sharply, feigning a move to the right, then snapped it back left, throwing off the sedan's rhythm. It overshot slightly, its momentum carrying it ahead. This was your chance. You floored the accelerator, the engine roaring in protest. The bridge lights blurred into streaks. You wove through the sparse late-night traffic, a desperate dance with death. The sedan, now behind you, struggled to regain its menacing proximity. You pushed your vehicle to its limits, adrenaline a bitter taste in your mouth, your heart a frantic drum against your ribs. You reached the end of the bridge, the open road ahead, and veered off sharply onto a narrow access ramp, disappearing into the maze of industrial warehouses and dimly lit side streets. The sedan, caught off guard, continued straight, its headlights vanishing into the distance. Your hands trembled on the steering wheel, a tremor that ran deep into your bones. They knew. They weren't just watching, they were actively trying to stop you. The stakes, already high, had just soared to a terrifying, deadly altitude. The ghost of your badge felt heavier now, not just a promise, but a perilous burden. You were in their crosshairs. And you had just confirmed everything. Days before your fall. You drove to the precinct, a place that now felt alien, unwelcoming. The sergeant, a burly man named Miller who'd once been your partner, met you with a wary expression in a cramped, windowless office. He'd seen you coming, the news of your return already a ripple through the stagnant waters of the department. "Thorne," he grunted, not bothering to rise. "Heard you were back." "What, cleaning up old messes now?" His tone was laced with a resentment that felt as old as your disgrace. "Ilara Vance," you stated, pushing the notebook across his desk, open to the incriminating page. "What do you know about Stone's Haven?" Miller's eyes narrowed. His gaze flicking from the notebook to your face. He leaned back, a deliberate act of distancing. "Stone's Haven? That was just some old, abandoned facility out in the district. Nothing there. Just a derelict immigration holding place, used for overflow years ago. Closed down now. Or repurposed," you countered, your voice low. Ilara thought it was important. And she linked it to SG connections to migrant flow. "Does SG mean anything to you?" He scoffed. "Sounds like crazy talk, Thorne." You know how Alara was. Always chasing shadows. You should leave this alone. Some things are better left buried. He looked at you, a warning in his eyes that transcended mere professional advice. You come poking around, you stir up more than dust. You stir up trouble. Big trouble. What kind of trouble? You pressed. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. The kind that makes people disappear, Thorne. Not just journalists. The kind that makes careers end. You know that better than anyone. He glanced around the office, as if listening for unseen ears. There are forces. The cold case files, brittle with age and neglect, spoke to you in whispers. You'd spend hours, days, chasing phantom echoes through digital corridors, sifting through the dross of encrypted chatter until a pattern, a ghost of a frequency, began to coalesce. It pointed, with unnerving precision, to specific coordinates, a time. Your fingers, raw from the keyboard, now tingled with the promise of something tangible, something that could be held, examined, and used as a weapon against the unseen. Now, the raw wind tore at your coat collar, whipping strands of hair across your eyes at the International Bridge Toll Plaza at night. Overhead, the skeletal arch of the bridge clawed at the ink-dark sky, a colossal rib cage humming with the passage of unseen currents. The air tasted of diesel and distant rain, a metallic chill seeping into your bones. Headlights, brief, searing arcs of white, streaked past the booths, each vehicle a fleeting, indifferent ghost. You were a solitary figure, a predator in a landscape of transient commerce, your gaze sweeping the desolate stretches between the toll booths, a silent hunter under a vast, uncaring canvas of stars. Your decryption had been precise, a set of layered coordinates that resolved into a single, unassuming marker, the third support beam from the west, near the abandoned maintenance shed, its base scarred by years of salt and grime. The air thrummed with the low growl of distant engines, a symphony of industrial solitude. Your gloved fingers traced the rough concrete, feeling for the anomaly the code had hinted at. With a controlled breath, you applied pressure, the mechanism groaning softly before a narrow slot gave way. Inside, nestled in a damp-proof pouch, was a micro SD card. Tiny, innocuous, yet its weight in your palm felt like a lead ingot, heavy with unspoken truths. Your portable reader hummed to life as you slotted the card in. Files bloomed across the screen, a cascade of dates, names, and encrypted messages. You bypassed the surface-level clutter, guided by the same instinct that had always been your truest compass. And then, it was there. Not a single document, but a mosaic of them, scanned ledger pages, time-stamped communications, and a series of high-resolution images. The names, when they appeared, were not unfamiliar. A string of shell corporations, their tendrils reaching into the financial arteries of the prominent politician's presidential campaign. The journalist had been close, too close, to exposing the financial nexus between the politician's ascent and the organization's illicit operations. And your own downfall? The agonizing truth about the murder that defined your downfall wasn't merely a failure of justice, it was a deliberate, surgical dismantling of it, orchestrated by the very architects of the current power structure. The air grew heavy, thick with the weight of this knowledge. You saw the faces of the innocent, the ones crushed beneath the machinery of ambition and deceit. You saw the journalist's vibrant, curious eyes in the surveillance photos, now forever extinguished. You saw the ghost of your old badge, no longer a phantom, but a shining beacon, demanding retribution. This wasn't just about redemption anymore, Marcus Thorne. This was about justice, raw and unyielding. Your life, your reputation, your very freedom, they were all on the line, mere pawns in a game played by titans. But the truth, once seen, could not be unseen. The fire within you, long banked by disgrace, roared back to life, hotter, fiercer than before. You would pursue this, not just to the ends of the earth, but to the very depths of their corrupted souls. The commitment was absolute, etched into the very core of your being. There was no turning back. You were Marcus Thorne, and you would see this through, no matter the cost. Your fingers, stained with the ink of forgotten reports, traced the final, damning transfer, a 7-figure sum routed through an obscure holding in the Cayman Islands, its ultimate beneficiary a political action committee directly funding the politician's nascent campaign, years before the public ever heard his name. A chill, deeper than the damp night air seeping through the window of your borrowed bolt hole, settled upon your shoulders. This was it. You leaned back, the old office chair groaning under the sudden shift, the weight of revelation pressing down. The journalist hadn't just been close, they'd been inside the vault, peering at the gold itself. A distant siren wailed, a thin thread of sound unwinding through the city's hum. You dismissed it, an urban commonplace. But then, a faint click echoed from the corridor outside, too precise, too deliberate for the settling of an old building. Your gaze snapped to the door, muscles tightening, the quiet hum of the laptop suddenly deafening. They knew. The digital breadcrumbs you'd followed, the frequencies you'd tapped, they had been tracing your echo too. A voice, low and urgent, crackled from the disposable burner phone you clutched. Marcus. They're moving. Fast. You've been compromised. Get out. Now. It was the strategist, his normally composed tone laced with a tremor you'd never heard. A true ally, though a reluctant one, bound by a shared disdain for the unseen puppeteers. The doorknob turned, slow and measured. No sudden crash, no shouted demands. They wanted you quiet. They wanted you to disappear as cleanly as the journalist. You didn't hesitate. The laptop screen flickered as you slammed it shut. Disconnecting the drive, and scooped up the burner, a spare clip for the compact pistol holstered at your hip, and a small, leather-bound journal that had belonged to the journalist, slipped from the crime scene file years ago. It felt impossibly heavy in your hand. You were out the back window before the door fully swung inward, dropping into the narrow alleyway, the sharp gravel biting at your worn sneakers. The siren was closer now, a banshee shriek splitting the night, joined by the rumble of heavy engines. Headlights flared at the alley's mouth. No time for subtlety. This was flight. A battered sedan, idling with its engine purring like a predatory cat, waited a block away, a concession from the strategist. You slid into the driver's seat, the synthetic leather cool beneath your touch, and coaxed the old engine to life. It coughed, then caught, sputtering its protest before settling into a ragged hum. The city lights blurred as you navigated the familiar labyrinth of side streets, each turn a calculated gamble, each intersection a potential ambush. The rearview mirror showed only the indifferent glow of street lamps, but you felt their presence, a tightening net. They were not just pursuing, they were anticipating. Your old habits, your predictable escape routes, were now their hunting grounds. A crackle from the burner phone. Marcus, their assets are converging on the northern exits. They want you contained. Perimeter is tight. The strategist again, his voice strained. There's a window, maybe. Heavy traffic this time of night, but it's risky. A gateway to another jurisdiction, another layer of bureaucracy, a momentary reprieve or a bottleneck. The choice was a razor's edge. But staying meant capture. You pressed the accelerator, the sedan lunging forward, its suspension groaning. The bridge. Your mind raced, piecing together the next move. While the strategist provided the escape route, the journalist's journal pulsed with an unread secret. You risked a glance at it, tucked into the passenger seat. The pursuit intensified. A black SUV, sleek and silent, materialized in your rearview mirror, gaining ground with unnerving speed. Its high beams flashed, a blinding signal of their intent. You swerved, cutting off a minivan, drawing a blare of horns, and shot down an exit ramp, the tires screaming in protest. A dozen lanes, each leading to a small, brightly lit booth, stretched across the expanse of the bridge approach. The air vibrated with the roar of engines, the murmur of waiting commuters, the rhythmic clack of toll gates. The air was thick with exhaust fumes and the distant tang of the river. The black SUV was right behind you now, its grille a gaping maw in your mirror. You saw another, equally menacing vehicle, weaving through lanes ahead, attempting to box you in. They were professionals, coordinated. You gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, a shallow gasp catching in your throat. This wasn't just about escape, it was about buying time. Time to understand the last piece. Your eyes darted to the journalist's journal on the passenger seat, its worn leather catching the intermittent flashes of the plaza lights. A stylized, interlocking pair of serpents. You'd seen it before, buried deep in the journalist's cryptic notes, dismissed as a personal doodle. It wasn't a doodle. It was a mark. A signature. The toll booth loomed. A uniformed attendant, oblivious, reached for your payment. But the black SUV was closing in, its engine a guttural roar. You didn't stop. You slammed the gas, the old sedan roaring through the barrier, shearing off the plastic arm with a violent crack. A collective gasp rose from the waiting cars, followed by shouts. You were through, but not free. The bridge stretched ahead, a long, steel spine over the dark water. In your mirror, the black SUVs converged on the ruined booth, their occupants already exiting, fanning out. They wouldn't give up. Not now. Not when you held the final, damning truth in your hands, its serpentine symbol burning itself into your memory. The hunt was on, and you, Marcus Thorne, were the prey. You are a blur of motion, a fleeting shadow against the harsh, utilitarian glow of the overhead lamps. The toll booth attendant, a silhouette framed by the harsh light, barely registers your passage before your tires sing on the metal grates, a frantic hymn of escape. The bridge stretches before you, an umbilical cord of steel and concrete, connecting one world to another, one fate to its unraveling. Below, the river slumbers, a dark, indifferent eye watching your flight. You do not look back. There is no time for rear-view reflections, only the relentless forward thrust. The sedans that pursued you are distant glimmers in your peripheral vision, their sirens a muted wail swallowed by the vast expanse of the bridge. They fall behind, perhaps deterred by the jurisdictional line you've just crossed, or perhaps content to let you believe you've gained an advantage, a temporary reprieve before the inevitable net tightens. The thought is a cold stone in your gut, but it fuels a grim resolve. Miles dissolve beneath your wheels. You navigate the labyrinthine arterial roads of the neighboring jurisdiction, a stranger in a strange land, yet intimately familiar with its underbelly. The city lights eventually thin, giving way to the skeletal structures of industrial parks, then the quiet desolation of forgotten warehouses. You find refuge in the shadow of a colossal, abandoned factory, its windows like vacant eyes staring into the void. Your fingers, stiff with adrenaline, unlatch the battered briefcase from the passenger seat. Inside, nestled amongst the worn files and the ghost of a journalist's final notes, lies the small, encrypted drive. The air in the sedan is thick with the scent of stale coffee and desperation. You pull a worn, older model laptop from a hidden compartment beneath the seat, its screen a dull glow in the enveloping gloom. The encryption is a beast, a multi-layered shield forged by a brilliant mind. But you know the pathways, the subtle tells, the digital fingerprints left by the journalist. Hours bleed into the night. Your eyes burn, tracing lines of code, deciphering the arcane language of data. The world outside shrinks to the confines of this small screen, every keystroke a step closer to the precipice. Then, a flicker. A pathway opens, and another. The final lock dissolves with a soft, electronic chime. The screen blooms with folders, file names, a digital archive. You navigate with practiced ease, your heart a drum against your ribs. And there it is. Not a single file, but a constellation of them. The journalist's voice, clear and precise, speaks from the past. You listen, hunched over the glowing screen, as the truth unfolds. A series of illicit land deals, funneled through shell corporations, all leading back to a holding company with direct ties to the politician's campaign manager. A muffled conversation, static-laced, between the campaign manager and a deep, gravelly voice you now recognize from hushed rumors within the old guard. They discuss loose ends, containment, and the unfortunate necessity of silencing the journalist before the story broke. The date of the recording? Days before the murder. The location discussed for their next meeting? An abandoned factory on the city's industrial outskirts, one known for its sprawling, isolated grounds. This isn't just about a politician's ambition or a journalist's demise. This is a meticulously woven tapestry of power, corruption, and murder, a web designed to ensnare an entire nation. The politician is merely a pawn, a public face for a far more insidious entity, the mastermind whose voice you just heard. The proof is undeniable, irrefutable. Enough to bring down an empire. But you also know it's a death warrant. Possessing this information makes you a target, the ultimate loose end. You could leak it, scatter it to the winds, let the truth ignite a firestorm. But that's not enough. Not for the journalist. Not for your own fractured conscience. You need to look them in the eye. To witness their downfall. A bold move, then. A calculated risk. You take a snippet of the recording, just enough to be tantalizing, just enough to be a threat, and embed it within an anonymous, untraceable email. The recipient, an anonymous tip line known to be monitored by the politician's inner circle. The message is simple, direct, and laced with venom or the truth cannot be contained. I have it all. And I know where you meet. You send it. The digital signal leaps across the networks, an invisible arrow shot into the heart of their fortress. You can almost feel the ripple, the sudden tremor of fear and fury. They will react. They will come for you. And you will be waiting. The location for the confrontation burns in your mind, the very abandoned factory mentioned in the recording, its desolate grandeur a fitting stage for this final act. It is a trap, you know this with every fiber of your being. But it is a trap you are laying for yourself, to draw out the architect of this vast deception. You will walk into the jaws of the beast, not as prey, but as the one holding the blade. The weight of the briefcases feels heavier now, the proof a physical burden. You start the engine, the roar a prelude to the storm. The final pieces are in place. The game is set. And you, Marcus Thorne, are ready to play. It carries the faint scent of diesel and the distant murmur of the city, a restless beast slumbering across the border. Above, the skeletal framework of the bridge stretches into the inky sky, studded with amber lights that cast long, wavering shadows. Each light seems to pulse with an anxious beat, mirroring the quiet thrum in your own veins. You stand by a deserted toll booth, its windows dark and vacant, a monument to forgotten transactions. The digital signal, your desperate gambit, has been launched. Now, you wait for the ripples to become waves, for the predators to emerge from the depths. Your breath plumes in the frigid air, a fleeting testament to your presence, your resolve. Headlights pierce the gloom, growing from pinpricks to blinding spears. They sweep around the empty booths, fanning out to encircle you, their polished surfaces reflecting the bridge lights like obsidian eyes. The lead car, a black behemoth, halts directly before you. Its passenger door opens with a soft click, and a figure emerges, silhouetted against the glow of the dashboard. Marcus Thorne, the voice is smooth, unhurried, yet it carries the weight of unquestioned authority. A borderland. Their presence is a silent promise of swift, brutal finality. Not my final act, you counter, your voice steady despite the tremor in your stomach. The wind tugs at your coat, a physical manifestation of the forces arrayed against you. The curtain call, perhaps. But the play isn't over. The mastermind offers a thin, mirthless smile. Such theatrics. You sent a message, Marcus. A foolish, desperate plea for attention. Did you truly believe it would make a difference? It already has, you state, your gaze unwavering. The journalist didn't die for nothing. They found the truth, didn't they? The truth about your organization, about the strings you pull, the puppet you put in the Oval Office. The mastermind's composure flickers, a brief tightening around his eyes. The journalist was a nuisance. An unfortunate accident. No accident, you press, each word a hammer blow. They had it all. They knew how you leveraged control, how you bought influence, how you planned to turn the nation into your own private enterprise. The journalist uncovered the precise mechanism of your power, not just the fact of it, but the intricate process of it. The coded transactions, the offshore accounts, the very names of the silent partners who form the backbone of your elite cabal. You take a step forward, drawing their attention, pulling them into your orbit. They were about to publish. About to expose the politician as nothing more than a figurehead, a charismatic mask for your true agenda. They had the dates, the meeting locations, the encrypted communications. Between your operatives and the campaign manager. They knew the exact moment the politician's conscience, if they ever had one, was irrevocably sold. A low growl emanates from one of the enforcers, a warning. Not just to protect the politician, but to protect the entire edifice of your power. A certainty that will be your undoing. You think you have exposed something? You have merely painted a target on your own back. The target was already there, you retort, a grim satisfaction settling over you. The moment I started digging. But unlike the journalist, I didn't send my findings to a publisher. It was a timed release. Everything I've gathered, everything the journalist died for, the complete dossier on your organization, the politician's complicity, the details of the journalist's murder, it's all out there. Broadcasting. Streaming. Encrypted, but set to decrypt and flood the public sphere within minutes if I don't check in. You hold up a small, unassuming device, a satellite communicator. Its single green light glows defiantly. Consider this my dead man's switch. If this signal drops, if I don't transmit a specific code every 60 seconds, the entire package goes live. Every news outlet, every independent journalist, every social media platform. The world will know. And there's nothing you can do to stop it now. It's a distributed network. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. The mastermind stares at the device, then at you, his face a mask of controlled rage. The air crackles with unspoken threats. You're bluffing, the mastermind snarls, but there's a tremor in his voice, a crack in his formidable facade. Am I, you challenge, your gaze steady? Is that a risk you're willing to take? To have your carefully constructed empire crumble into dust, exposed for the parasitic conspiracy it truly is? To see your puppet politician dragged through the mud, their presidential ambitions shattered, their legacy irrevocably tainted by murder and corruption? The wind whips around you, carrying the weight of your words, the enormity of the choice you forced upon him. The toll plaza, once a place of mundane passage, has become an arena, a crucible where the fate of powerful men and a nation's conscience hangs in the balance. The clock is ticking. Family, their disappearance linked to a charitable program run by a newly formed entity, one of the sovereign group's early fronts, which operated out of a temporary holding facility in the very same district as Stone's Haven. Your past failure wasn't just a personal demon, it was a missing piece of Ilara's puzzle, a crucial link you had overlooked. The identity of the victims, their forgotten stories, now screamed for justice. The betraying sting came not from a stranger, but from a familiar face. You sought out the chief, your former mentor, the man who had always believed in you, even in your darkest hours. He was now retired, living a quiet life in a suburban home, tending to his rose garden. You found him there, pruning a vibrant red bloom, his face weathered but his eyes still sharp. Marcus, he said, a genuine warmth in his voice, a stark contrast to Miller's coldness. It's been too long. What brings you out to the land of the living? You sat on his porch swing, the scent of roses cloying in the air. Ilara Vance. Stone's Haven. The Sovereign Group. His hand, holding the pruning shears, stilled. It's dangerous, son. Let it go. He was investigating the missing migrant family, you pressed, watching his reaction closely. The ones from the charitable program. The same year I dropped the ball. He sighed, a heavy, world-weary sound. That was a difficult time for you, Marcus. For all of us. Those cases. They're complicated. The border, the politics. It was messy. Messy, or covered the wind whips around you, carrying the weight of your words, the enormity of the choice you forced upon him. The International Bridge Toll Plaza at night, once a place of mundane passage, has become an arena, a crucible where the fate of powerful men and a nation's conscience hangs in the balance. The enforcers take another step, their shadows stretching long and distorted under the sodium lamps, closing the distance between their cold intent and your unwavering stance. You feel the tremor in the asphalt beneath your worn shoes, a resonance of the engines idling nearby, a low hum that vibrates with the tension coiling in your gut. Your gaze locks with that of the politician, a man whose carefully constructed facade now crumbles like ancient masonry under the harsh glare of the toll booth lights. His eyes, usually so calculating, now betray a flicker of panic, a desperate animal trapped in a spotlight. "Your move," you utter, your voice steady despite the gale trying to rip the words from your throat. The briefcase clutched in your hand feels heavier than lead, not just with the documents it contains, but with the years of guilt, the ghost of a journalist's unanswered scream, the tarnished badge. A guttural command ripples through the air from the politician. The enforcers, hulking figures draped in the night's anonymity, quicken their pace. You see the glint of steel, a cold promise of finality. This is it. The culmination of a desperate chase, a lonely crusade against an enemy cloaked in power and privilege. But you are not alone. A distant siren, faint at first, then growing in urgency, slices through the night. It is not the wail of emergency services, but something different, sharper, more deliberate. The politician's head snaps up, his gaze darting towards the sound, his face contorting in a mask of frustrated fury. Suddenly, a flurry of movement erupts from the cluster of vehicles parked just beyond the toll booths. Not the enforcers, but a different kind of force. The internal affairs officer, the one who had quietly offered you a lifeline, leads them, his face grim but resolute. He carries a warrant, its edges crisp even from this distance, an official document that now cuts through the web of deceit. The enforcers hesitate, their aggression momentarily suspended by the unexpected arrival. You watch as the scene unfolds, a ballet of conflicting wills. The politician snarls, a cornered beast, but the authority in the new arrival's presence is undeniable. They are not easily swayed, not easily bought. Marcus Thorne, the internal affairs officer, calls out, his voice cutting through the wind, "We have what we need. It's over." Relief, a profound, bone-deep wave, threatens to buckle your knees. But you hold firm, your eyes still fixed on the politician. This isn't just about the warrant. It's about the truth. The politician, seeing the game truly lost, lets out a defeated sigh that seems to carry the weight of his entire corrupt empire. His eyes meet yours one last time, a venomous promise of future retribution, but the power has drained from them. The enforcers, sensing the shift, slowly lower their weapons, their posture deflating. The fight has left them. You open the briefcase, not for the internal affairs officer, but for the cameras that suddenly materialize, flashes popping like distant lightning. It's not a confession of guilt for the murder itself, but for the orchestrating of the entire elaborate deception that led to it, and the subsequent efforts to bury the truth. The journalist had uncovered the very mechanism of their power, a vast network of illicit dealings and political manipulation that threatened to unravel their carefully constructed world. Her death was not a random act, but a calculated execution to prevent this truth from reaching the public. The air crackles with the revelation. You watch as the politician is surrounded, his protests fading into the general din of official voices and clicking cameras. You step back, the briefcase now feeling light and empty in your hand. It feels cleansing, a balm on old wounds. The internal affairs officer approaches you, a rare, almost imperceptible nod of respect in his eyes. You did it, Thorne. You really did it. You simply nod, your gaze sweeping across the scene. The International Bridge, a symbol of connection, now bears witness to a profound severance, the ties of corruption finally cut. You see the faces of the news reporters, their eager expressions reflecting the monumental story they've just stumbled upon, a story that will shake the foundations of power. The path ahead remains shrouded in mist. Your badge is still gone, your career as a detective likely over. But the gnawing emptiness in your chest, the constant echo of failure, has receded. The ghost of the journalist, once a haunting presence, now feels like a quiet, grateful memory. You have given her voice back. You have honored her courage. The sense of purpose, long dormant, stirs within you, a quiet hum of possibility. You are no longer defined by the failure that cost you everything, but by the courage it took to stand against it, to fight for a truth others sought to bury. You turn away from the flashing lights, the clamor of voices, the unfolding drama. The International Bridge stretches before you, an endless ribbon of asphalt disappearing into the night. The future is unwritten, a blank page waiting for your hand. Perhaps you will continue to seek out the hidden truths, no longer bound by the strictures of a uniform, but by an unwavering commitment to justice. You are Marcus Thorne, and you are finally free. The weight is lifted. The journey continues, uncertain but imbued with a hard-won peace. You walk towards the edge of the plaza, towards the unknown, leaving the echoes of the past to dissipate into the vast, silent night.